beginning of the 57th Conference on Narcotic Drugs, always in Vienna, which is the main building that is acquiring lots of the deputies, starting with the speech of Fedorov, but everything seems not to perceive the profound changes that are occurring in the world. Here, inside, everything seems to be still. We are talking to Jim Dierach of the Law Enforcement Against Prohibition in the United States, where the movement of the policemen and judges started, to ask him what is all about.
Enrico, good to be with you. Let me say that the difficulty is that the Commission on Narcotic Drugs is still enforcing treaties that were written in 1961. And even though the dynamics of drugs and drug policy is changing around the world, as we've seen in Uruguay, where they've legalized marijuana for recreational purposes, and the same thing happening in the United States in Colorado and Washington, and other places in the world moving in the same direction. Here at the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, they're still stuck with their feet in concrete poured in 1961. It's evident to the people of the world that prohibition as a drug policy has failed, that the criminalization of all of these drugs and treating all of the drugs basically the same, zero tolerance for all of them, has not worked. It's caused worldwide havoc. In some parts of the world, for example, Mexico, over 100,000 people have been killed in the last 10 years as the United States assisted Mexico in a war on drugs. It's made it worse instead of better, not just with the drug problem, but with the violence. In the United States, where I come from, we've become the prison capital of the world. We used to be thought of as the freedom capital of the world. But now, because of this war on drugs, we have the highest rate of incarceration of any country in the world. We have 5% of the population of the world, but 25% of the population in the prisons. The people in the United States and other places in the world are so upset with the status quo evidenced by these drug treaties at the United Nations that they themselves are demanding change, and they're doing it at the ballot box. These two initiatives in Colorado and Washington, the people voted those things in. Switching to European environment, the Netherlands for a long time have recognized that if they treat marijuana differently than hard drugs, it will have a salutary effect on people moving to hard drugs. And the rates of those use of those drugs in Europe are much less than they are in the United States, because we treat everything the same, which is basically what the UN conventions ask us to do. So LEAP, which is the organization I'm affiliated with, is all former law enforcement agents, whether they're policemen or judges or prosecutors, jailers, people who had a part in prosecuting this war on drugs for these 50-some years. They've come to the realization that prohibition makes things worse instead of better. And we've come these last number of years to the UN saying you need to take up the questions of whether or not the treaties make things worse instead of better. So should we be looking at new drug policy to try to improve the conditions in the world, the violence, the corruption, the drug use, the overdoses, the bullet holes, so many problems, the undermining of democracies? And so LEAP, in an effort to try to help and bring things to the attention of the convention, has prepared a proposed amendment to these three prohibition treaties, suggesting that we should end this one-size-fits-all and instead put in a set of rules where nations themselves could determine what the best drug policy is for their country based on what the particular problems are in their country, and to replace this criminalization model with a model that instead puts in a health-oriented drug policy, that puts in a human rights policy, that tries to reduce the harm from drugs. People in their right minds realize that drugs have been here from the beginning of time and will be till the end of time. And so is it not better to try and do something realistic and practical instead of saying the answer is zero tolerance? When we know people will use drugs, we know that you can't eliminate them. You can outlaw dandelions, you can outlaw gravity, but you can't make it go away. And there's not much difference with drugs. You can outlaw them, but you can't make them go away. So Al Capone, it was in favor of the criminalization of alcohol. Pablo Escobar from Colombia, a nice fellow, except he killed too many people.
He was also
in
the UN
favor.
delegate, you know that?
Was he?
UN delegate with the minister, but eventually had the quarrel and he shot him.
Maybe he had too big of an influence on the place. but now we've arrested this guy Guzman, a big drug trafficker from Mexico, but it will not matter. I mean, he's a multi-billionaire. The drug war has been good for him, but it's been horrible for the world. And so we are here to really implore the leaders of the United Nations, the delegates who are assembled from around the world, and begging them, imploring them to please put in place some program that's helpful to the people, that reduces the harm from drugs, that makes them not the most valuable commodity on the face of the earth, but again, something that grows on a plant that nobody would pay so much interest or attention to. Fewer people would be overdosing. I mean, that's what we're here for, and I hope we can get it accomplished.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.